Welcome.
Come to Pop.
I've rewritten much of my website. If anyone's interested, you're welcome to look at that.
New message.
Define message.
What are you focusing on or highlighting as your student?
I'm just being a little more targeted. My approach up till now has been giving people a lot of freedom with the expectation that they would find their way. And what I'm going to be doing now is being a little more targeted and giving people their freedom to find their way.
What do you think we're not seeing?
I don't know. What are you not seeing?
If I knew.
What are you seeing? Go to the positive. Forget about the negative. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing that it's all right here. That there's nothing more than this.
Good. Okay, so what's right here? I don't mean what's right here. I mean what is right here. What does right here mean?
Well, it's seeing what's here instead of thinking or opting for something.
Right. Okay. Good.
That there is something other than this. That I still don't know that there is.
There's nothing other than this, but this is other than this because this isn't a thing. And that's the astounding point, is that what this is, what is present, is inconceivable. In the strongest possible sense. It's bizarre. It's unimaginable. It's not a thing. It's not a condition. It can't be pinned down. So saying this as if, oh, just this, and that's like you said something. You've indicated inconceivability. You've indicated infinite openness. You've indicated it can't be said. And that is a wonder. That is a wonder. I mean, that it is right here is a good. It puts you in the doorway. Then you go through the doorway. What is it that is right? And bang, you're where are you? You know everybody. But absolutely without definability. And noticing that fact is very interesting.
I wanted to run this by you. Talking about jumping up. Say, well, there's no cliff, or the cliff is this big. Could you say it's? I know it's not exactly this, but could you say that it's closer to say it's more of an apparent, just it's like turning the dial, just shifting to a different perspective.
Sure. It's
just a different take.
Sure. But it's more fundamentally to discover that there is no perspective, and within that no perspective, there's any perspective you want. You can spin the dialogue you want, but then the amazing thing is it's just radio. So that's the tricky part. There's all the programs, and you can spin the dial. So there's all of these different perspectives, but perspectives on what? Not perspectives on anything. Or you can't say what their perspectives on. It's literally bottomless, topless, or just inconceivable. So yeah, definitely. The first revelation is, oh wow, I've been stuck in a point of view. I've been stuck in seeing things this way. I've been stuck in a channel, and that's what we do. To discover, oh wow, some other channel, and you stumble into that. This is great. So much. But then the next revelation is but they're just channels. They're just channels in what? Of what? And that's where it starts to get interesting. I mean, it starts to get interesting, and the first is then the interest is completely, infinitely exponential forever from then on.
But the what has a subject now in that we find that there is a conversation about something we recognize, an experience that we also have. So that also we all have experience of whatever this is. It seems somewhat insane. I mean, it's not like, I see cars and trees, I know that.
Yeah, but what is that? What does that consist of? It's my.
Jeff says it's not video.
Well, the video says broadcasting, and the audio looks okay on my end. So.
I'm so easy.
Help me get his ass out here.
He called a little before the stop sign started to say, "Nothing on the gate." He said, "Yeah."
Tell him we were serving.
No. I get a chance.
But anything you can say is, what is it? It's inconceivable. So yeah, there's commonality. What does that mean? It's like bang, the bottom drops out. How does that happen? Bang, the bottom drops out. How is it received? Bang, the bottom drops out. Well, we can share these things. What does that mean? What is sharing? It's like bang, the bottom drops out. It's inconceivable. We're sharing it. You know, it's self-evident. Go looking for what is. You can't find it. You can't find it. Which is the powerful fact. Continue it a bit. This makes it a little better.
Well, I see a kind of miraculousness of taking this unknown and taking it for granted and making it commonplace.
Yeah.
And you run through it as if you knew what it was and having power over it. And
Yeah.
controlling it.
Yeah. It's a sounding that can happen, and when that happens, you can't. How does that happen? What is it that's happening when that happens? It's all. What is? You know, what's anything? You know, you can't get it out.
I understand that. And having power over it, and it come with it. Those words don't even make sense. And what that even is.
No, it's not important. It's one way to see things, and like any way of seeing things, just a way of seeing things. Doesn't really matter. It's not really anything. And that's the point. What you said can be said about anything whatsoever.
Right. So those are Irma's words.
Yeah.
That you can resonate with somehow.
Sure.
That I can be sitting here going,
Sure.
Well, it's like putting a key in your car and thinking it's going to take off and that you're going to go do this and that. I mean, we've got this all organ that we think we know where it is, and it's going to work a certain way, and to some extent, it does. And I mean, it's amazing that we can operate within this mysterious scenario.
Sure. And the operation, the so-called operating, is itself mysterious. How it works is mysterious. The coherence it seems to have is mysterious. Everything, there's nothing but mysterious. You get mysterious all the way down. It's mysterious, 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 mysterious.
Language is just based on karma, because I'm like, what is that? It's like, I just feel like I'm crashing through reality. Like, whoa, what's this now? Oh no, something else. That's just to be, bombs to be dropping out. Oh my God, what is commonplace? Not seeing it.
Again, there's lots of different perspectives, and any perspective is equally viable and equally inaccurate. There's no truth. I mean, that's the really powerful thing about perspective.
It feels like any perspective could get ripped away.
Right. But even that is actually perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets subtler and subtler and subtler endlessly, literally endlessly, without limit. It's just like, peeling the layers of the onion, and how far does the onion go on forever? It seems like that. It seems this way. It seems like that way. It seems like no way. It's nothing. All of these layers are just okay, and then the next one comes out, and then the next one comes out forever. It's like in a dream. What's happening in the dream? Well, at one point you're sitting there talking to someone, and the next minute it's just some weird trippy textures, and then the minute it's like, what's happening? What's happening? It's these instances of coherence that aren't really coherent, and they vanished in the next instant or whatever, or not. Without it, we never get to you never find what the dream's really about. Now it's really happening. It's not like that. There is no really. There is no. The open-endedness of this is absolute. And that is a perspective. It's a partial answer. You can't say anything. You can't say anything about this. It's accurate.
When we say things like it's this, it sounds very simple, and simple and difficult aren't really relevant words.
Right.
So it's very difficult to make assumptions based upon language.
Well, it's basically impossible not to make assumptions. All of these sort of, I used to call them modes, but all of these different sort of degrees of apparent coherence in some fashion or another just endlessly present themselves, implications of, it's this or it's that. Not even you think consciously. Just sort of, just to experience, and it's impossible for that not to happen. I guess, Who knows? Maybe not. But it seems to me that happens continually without resolution.
I feel like I'm going backwards. I got lost in the idea. So I always, the way my personality works is I try to reject things, eliminate things, make things really simple and clean. And then in the process, I lose everything that's joyful. Of course, it's all innocent. And so I heard life dream. So I thought, okay, life's a dream. So I kind of jumped ahead, I think, in a way.
Right.
I was going to make myself see that.
Right.
And that would be my progress.
Right.
And what really happened was I just got very neglectful of my health and how I was really feeling. And I just went through noticing I was going into it. So I figured out, but...
What do you define a dream?
Good question. Just something that's not very solid. So I just look at whatever was going on.
But solidity itself is a dream. It doesn't need to be not solid to be a dream. You can be dreaming solidity. You can be dreaming stability. You can be dreaming functionality. You can be dreaming simplicity.
I was just trying to,
Or
wherever
not.
I was at, whatever was happening, I was trying to look at it. Okay, this isn't real. This has no real. This doesn't matter. But
Try, if you want to play with something like that, try playing with something along these lines. Try playing with this is very, very much more than it seems to be to me, and this is very much other than it seems to be, while not necessarily being the way it seems. So you're just saying, well, gosh, whatever is presenting is the tip of the iceberg, and the iceberg goes in God knows what direction. And the iceberg may seem to be here, but then you follow the boat out there somewhere, and yet that is this.
that's good because that leads you in and makes you notice.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of what.
Yeah. Be with concrete actuality. But concrete actuality is infinitely nuanced, has infinite implications. It always opens into more. Which is in itself simple, but it's not a simplicity of exclusion, or a simplicity of shortening lists, so to speak.
And I was told us to listen to one of the LA broadcasts, and he was talking about but I also have this other at the same time, which is completely different, which is this whole spiritual stuff that I learned for years. It's like I'm in a loop now, and now the train's going backwards like this, and I'm seeing all these things that I thought were a good idea that I learned, and now that's
it.
Yeah. That's crap.
That is a good thing. Yeah. Throw out all spiritual teachings you've ever gotten. Throw them all away. They're crap.
I thought I'd already thrown one out. And I actually discovered it there. And once in a while I'll stop and I'll go, God, I'm going to turn into a real jerk before this is over. But that's okay. Oh, I know what it was. Somebody in the group said, every time you say something, like notice, every time you're really noticing, it's like it's the very first time it's happened. And you said, yeah, and like, it's always new. And you always feel like you've forgotten. And you're always like, but I know this. How is it possible?
Yeah.
And it's so fun to have that feeling over and over.
Yeah. And that's what every moment is, always. Just the present moment is always like, there's always recognition and a befuddlement. You're always like, oh yeah, here I am, of course. And it's like, but what's happening? What's going on? Where am I? And then, same again, just endlessly, this is what experience is.
But there's also that thing, what the heck, how did I ever get away from this? And you do.
Sure. But you get away from it into it. You don't get away, no, inevitably, because there's nothing else to get away into as infinite of itself. I mean, noticing, there's no such thing as not noticing. It's not like, I better notice because I haven't been noticing.
Well, that's what it feels like if you're lost in a story.
Yeah, but being lost in a story is...
Maybe you're noticing the story.
Sure. You know, you're being with your experience. You can't not be your experience. And your experience always looks different. And whatever it's taking it to be, it's a simplification. A vast, inconceivable oversimplification. So, it's always basically the same. And sometimes it seems to be more of a recognition, and sometimes it can seem to be more of a fulfillment. But there's always actually equal portions. It never makes any sense. And yet there can be recognition. But this, your experience is concretely present, always. It's completely concretely present. No holds barred. It's right. It's revealed. There's no walls or barriers up there blocking anything. And yet you can never get a handle on what it is. You can never get a handle on what it looks like. Even as it unendingly seems to look all these various elaborate ways. The moment you flash on this and that and the other, and you're just like, getting all these different takes on what's going on here. And they're all wrong. And yet they're unstoppable. They just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And that's part of what this is. But even as that occurs, it never stops being what it is, which is unresolvable, which is infinitely open-ended.
You just said it never makes any sense.
Right.
It does make sense. It makes infinite sense.
Okay. Depending on how you define sense. It is play itself, and that is knowable. So if you define making sense as that, then yeah, it makes sense. But I think, and no other way that I can think of doesn't make any sense.
If you understand it, then it makes no sense.
Right, yeah. I'm trying to get a handle on it.
There's nothing to understand. so
Exactly. When you get there's nothing to understand.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just a matter of terms.
As
It's
you
always a matter of terms.
Can you talk about fear?
Well, fear is predominantly two things. Fear is an energy present, and fear is an interpretation. And these two aspects of it present more or less simultaneously. I can talk just as well about almost any kind of condition that seems to have experiential condition that seems to have a charge in the same terms, which broadens the discussion, but it also too. So there's an energy condition. Let's call it flavor. Is present, and typically there's some degree of interpretation that presents along with that. It may not be conscious or explicit in terms of analytical, but there's some degree of interpretation or some sense of, oh, this is about that. What's going on here is and such, which is some degree of interpretation. The interpretation gives the energy it fleshes it out. It gives it like what's the word? I think of a good image. The interpretation just gives the upwelling energy an embodiment. It gives it a sort of a pseudo stability, a pseudo coherence. The image I'm getting is like weeds blown in the wind, and if they hit a fence, they all sort of build up on the fence, and all of a sudden it looks like there's something there because the fence is holding the weeds there, whereas the weeds themselves are actually just completely dynamic. If the fence wasn't there, they wouldn't be. So there's continually an experience. There's continually all amazing tidal flows of flavors, of qualities that are just continually churning around, let's say, seemingly, properly put. They are dynamic and unstable and not based on anything. But when an interpretation is associated, or some degree of narration associated, it can set up a little kind of a feedback loop, or seem to set up a feedback loop where the energy is about something, and then the something is something that becomes a problem, and you address or orienting to in some way, which fact on the energy and tends to make it be a little more persistent. Whereas if the interpretation wasn't there, the energy would tend to be much more dynamic and would possibly much more rapidly morph into something else.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
So let's say just to get a picture of it. Let's say you have PTSD.
Uh-huh.
And you have this cellular trauma. Just to give
Right.
a story and a picture.
Uh-huh.
So the cellular trauma, you're not necessarily, telling a conscious story.
Right.
But, anybody says anything and there's like fear response.
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily even aware of the fear response.
Right.
But it's there, and then you suddenly become a little bit aware of it, and then there's maybe an interpretation around that because, Irma implied, like, you don't have control over it. You don't get to just go, well, no, you don't do that.
Right.
It's right there.
Uh-huh.
So my question is, how to wake up? Does that, in a sense, stop running the show?
Well,
Seeming to run the show. If it's like in cellular,
yeah.
it happened when you were 1 year old, whatever, and you lived
I understand. Yeah.
whatever.
The way any waking up happens is through seeing what it is. It sees what it is. It doesn't need to stop being there. And we all experience this because we're all more or less warped. The nature of being a human being is to be, warped or, let's say, influenced by influenced by imperfections, influenced by whatever. Right? I mean, we're all basically have our own private version of PTSD, whether or not you put it in those terms, right? And yet, waking up can happen. And it doesn't happen by fixing those conditions. It happens by seeing the context within which they occur. And discovering that that context is not dependent upon conditions, is not dependent upon them not being there, is not dependent upon them being fixed, they're just basically completely irrelevant. But it's an interesting paradox because if, let's say, karmically get to the point where you can see that, you have to have, let's call it luck, where things come together enough that seeing can happen. And, possibly if you're traumatized enough, you're so caught in the trauma that seeing is not, can't lever its way in. And it's a sort of an interesting fine point whether or not that can happen anyway, because there's always myriad factors in play. Situations are infinitely complex, nothing is simple. So there's always arguably potential for luck, potential for seeing an angle, potential for getting outside, no matter how impaired you are, how embedded you are in let's call it a karmic chain event. Waking up, realization is about seeing what it is. It's not about fixing it. It's not about fixing what has happened. It's not about fixing mistakes. It's not about remedying problems. It's about simply seeing them. And in seeing, they reveal themselves to be completely irrelevant. But again, you have to, by hook or by crook, find yourself in a position where this happens, and that's where that's a mystery. It requires luck, it requires karma, it requires God knows what. It requires whatever it takes for it to happen, I guess. But it can happen at any time. Because again, no situation, because there's always enough complex factors present that it is conceivable that this and that and the right ones could happen to be randomly drawn on at just the right circumstance for the magic to happen, or not, right? So it's a strange situation, and to go back to what I was talking about in terms of fear and these other kinds of things, the seeing of it, talking about the upwelling of an energy flavor and then some degree of interpretation, the seeing of it tends to undercut the validity of interpretation, and the attention or the awareness is with, to a greater degree, the underlying upwelling energy. At which point its amorphousness found, and also its dynamism, its absolute unstuckness is found. And the fact that these energy upwellings are continually unstuck and morphing in nearness, and not because they're like tides. The tides never stop flowing. But that's harder to see when the attention is going to this interpretation, so to give them a stability. Again, it ultimately gets down to just seeing, which tends to include, or tends to be going to include more of the underlying upwelling and less of a fixation on narrative, fixation on interpretation. Something is present. This condition is present, and that fact can be seen at any time. And that is the finish line. Just seeing that this condition is present, comprehensive, as opposed to orienting towards partial interpretation of this present, which basically you're always in some degree of that spectrum. Well, you're always seeing it comprehensively. You always see all of it, but you don't recognize it. You don't necessarily recognize it, I'd say. If you're orienting to it in terms of interpretations, let's say. it's like weighting things. It's by weighting, I mean biasing. You know, it's being weighted, having your interpretation is, if your experience of your experience is weighted towards a certain bandwidth of interpretation, then you're zooming in on that and giving that undue importance. Whereas being with the fullness of what is actually present in its own natural perspective is liberation. And the interpretations don't go away because interpretations are actually present. That's a part of what is here. But they aren't particularly important. And we give it weight. We're biased. We tend to be biased towards being with our experience in terms of interpretations of what it is, which creates a kind of an effective partiality. We're never actually cut off from our full experience, but we may not be noticing it because this is what really matters right here. Kind of like a pseudo television, even though it's not an actual television, because nothing is here. It is hidden. Nothing is concealed.
I find this constant. I like this. I don't like this. I like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. I mean, it's just endless.
Sure.
And almost like a survivalist. It's just like seems a way of going through the world and just being.
Sure. And that is an event, and that is present, but it's not particularly important. So it's not a matter of stopping that. It's a matter of, let's say, sort of, analogically dollying back until you have the big picture. In which context you've noticed that all these little personal obsessions and mode of running your energy or what have you are just relatively small events in this vastness, and actually they are being done by the vastness and consist of the same thing that the vastness is. So they're complete non-events, they're non-entities. It's like, the ocean doesn't need to worry about what any particular wave is, because it's just ocean. It doesn't add or subtract from the ocean. It doesn't change anything at all. But if you ignore the ocean and just fixate on the wave, it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so good. Or whatever. But all aspects of experience are real. They're all present, but they are all aspects of and being done by the whole. That's the actual context. And when you see that, you realize that some of these aspects are your individuality, some of these aspects are quirks of your personality, some of these aspects are your own personal obsessions, success and failure, life and death, health and sickness, all these kinds of things, which, if we had disproportionately we think, oh my God, that really matters. It doesn't, because all of those real, actual, experiential events are being done by this vast system, which includes so much more than that. And it is not improved by the presence of these things. It is not damaged by the presence of these things. These things are essentially a non-event. And yet we don't realize that because we give it a importance typically vested in that mode of being with experience. But if you can cut through to being with experience itself, this the actual perspective becomes quite clear and quite explicit. It's, to go back to the ever powerful dream analogy, it's just like that. In a dream, some particular event may seem to really be important and really be mattering. Some transaction that's happening may seem to be really of the essence, and you get, I'm just dreaming. It just doesn't matter. These things are present, sure, experiencing them, but they're just like these events in a dream. It's like, who gives a shit? It's being done. They're being dreamed. There's they have no implication. They have no fallout. They have nothing is improved by their presence. Nothing is damaged by their presence. They're completely irrelevant. And likewise, in this kind of obsessions we have that we think important, that we feel are impediments, they're not impediments. They're just relatively small energy events in a vast energy system that is intrinsically integrated. It is intrinsically itself. The whole system is what's here, not parts. And the whole system is not made up of parts any more than a dream is made. The dreaming is made up of events in the dream put together like bricks building a house. It's not like that, is it? The dream is the entity. The dreaming is the entity that's there. What seem to appear are just artifacts of that entity. And likewise, all of these specifics, pseudo-specific sorts of things that we obsess about in our personalities and our lives, and success and failure, pain and pleasure, all these things are tiny little energy ripples in this vast full that exists in fullness inalienably. It cannot be full. So it just doesn't matter if these ripples are there or not. And it's doing the ripples. Just like the ocean does the waves. The ocean's not hurt by waves. It's not improved by waves. They just don't matter. They're just like a tiny little, little aspect of this actuality, this actual present system that alone is actually here. Now, when you see that, you see you are this system. You are not this ripple or that ripple or this wave. You're the ocean. That's what there is here. There's nothing else to be. There's only one thing here, and it's the ocean. So, waves present? Well, sure, because it's the ocean. And the ocean has waves, but there's lots of other things present too. And none of the parts matter, because the ocean isn't made of the parts. The ocean is doing the parts.
That kind of sums it up.
I think we stand-up comedy.
I'd like to make a comment about that.
You should do stand-up comedy too.
When you talk about things don't matter, they don't matter absolutely, and they don't matter when you have integrated.
Right.
But they do matter until you have reached that, until you have integrated into reality. And that's the tricky part of this whole process is
Right.
that things matter because I know things matter to me because I'm not integrated, but yet the integration doesn't itself. And if there's nothing really I can do, I can just kind of like look at everything that's happening and you
Right.
know, but I don't feel there's anything I really can do in terms of, you know, the whole process. It's kind of like doing it itself.
Sure.
But I do see everything that matters now. I mean, that's kind of like my noticing is that everything that's happening in my worlds, I you know, things matter. You know, I can feel the difference between, you
Right.
know, being invested in whatever and feeling, you know, the radiance, whatever that means.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. An important point, though, is you say in the absolute it doesn't matter, but then until integration it does. There's only the absolute, so it doesn't matter. The mattering that's now is it seems to matter,
Right.
but it doesn't actually matter.
Right.
The actuality is already the case.
Yeah.
What will be the case when after integration, when you have full realization, is the case now. 100%. So any seeming of mattering and all that is a misinterpretation of shit.
Yeah.
And I realize that I mean it's experienced as if it matters, but it does not actually matter any more or less than it will after integration. In actuality, it does not matter.
Yeah. It just.
Even it seems to.
Yeah. It's just hard to slip out of that.
Of course, it is.
That it matters. It's like you know, it just kind of like
Yeah.
hits you.
Yeah. Well, there is something you can do. There's a trick. When things are present in your experience, it seems to matter. Find something that doesn't matter and see what's going on there. Like, just pick a random square inch on the wall over there. Say this is a really sucky situation and you hate everyone here. You know, suppose you're at work in a board meeting or something, right? And it's like, oh my God, you know, putting your hair out, whatever. You know, pick like a smoke detector on the roof or a particular leaf outside the window or something. It just doesn't matter. It's not part of anything that matters, and yet it's present.
Yeah.
It's actual, and be with that actuality without matter, and that actuality is there that doesn't matter is exactly the same actuality that's there that seems to matter, and when you're seeing it over here where it matters as opposed to over there where it doesn't matter. In other words, your problem is here that really matters it's present, but that over there that doesn't matter has exactly the same presence. It's just as real. It's just actual.
It has a different flavor to it.
Yeah, it's a different flavor. Yet it's a real flavor.
Yeah.
And it is a flavor that is. It's not neutral. It's full of qualities and implications and meaningfulness, but it doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? It's just a spot on the wall, right? Or a cloud in the sky, whatever.
Yes.
And then, so be with the presence of that that doesn't look at the presence of it does matter, and you sort of zoom back and forth and say, God, same presence. And the presence isn't coming in, right? And so in that way, I mean, it's a simple little trick. You're actually tuning into that there is presence aside from the matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. I mean, that kind of became strong to me last week. I just kind of thought, I can get out of this matter and just go watch a movie.
Yeah, and it doesn't make the mattering go away, but actually it kind of will.
Yeah.
Because you're noticing you're experiencing the tunnel vision of matter and tries to suck you into.
Yeah.
And that is literally, it's a retraining process. You're retraining yourself to, I mean, anytime you're in a situation, aspects you can find where you look at them and you go, God, I don't really like that. If I was that would like not be in this experience. Anytime, anywhere, you can be in a really beautiful, idyllic setting, you can find something that pisses you off, right? But that's a small thing in the context of a vast thing, and there's all sorts of other qualities present. This is an amazing symphony, panorama of all of these qualities, and they're all present. And some you like and some you don't like. But most of them are kind of neutral. But they're not neutral by being nothing, neutral by being full of flavor and implication and nuance, and you can really trip on any one of them. But most of them are transpersonal, not a part of your story. And yet they're part of you, or they wouldn't be showing up in your experience. So right there, you are being with your own experience outside of your story. You've stepped outside of your worldview. In fact, that's what happens when that happens. And you can feel what that feels like. And then you can go back into your worldview and feel what that feels like, and sort of step in and out and step in and out. And after a while, it'll just sink in. Very often, you don't need to. It's not analytical. You don't need to think about it. It's just the feeling of being able to go out of your obsessions will just you'll get it on an energy level. You'll get it in your body, so to speak.
With that seems to come the feeling of I don't really care.
Sure.
Whether it's kind of
It's a liberation.
But I've noticed it's not necessarily great for the people around you.
Fuck 'em.
For the people around you.
Yes, if you're in that meeting, looking at the pond. You're called the pond.
Well, somebody said, what do you think?
Well, it's like any game structure. You can play it any way you want.
You can play it any way you want.
You can play the game, or you can just say, "God, this is bullshit. I'm out of here." And well, sure, your circumstances will seem to change, but nothing will really change. Something else will present that itself, and you go on. I mean, jobs come and go, There's a lot of ways to live your life, and just because you happen to be doing it one way doesn't mean it's the best. or you could play the game and have it continue, and still not give a shit. Because not giving a shit can include giving a shit about doing it. It goes across the board. I mean, not giving a shit doesn't imply nihilism or incompetence or abandonment. I mean, it doesn't matter what you say. You can lie, cheat, and run for president. Or whatever.
But it also doesn't mean that looking at a menu and you can't make a decision about what you want to eat. I mean, something just preferences.
Yeah, but you don't give a shit about their being preferences, and you exercise them or not, and that happens, and the whole thing is like it's none of it. Particularly, nothing hinges on any of it.
No.
It's like you're in a room with 1,000 doors, and when you go into, you're going to be in another room with 1,000 doors. Whichever one of those you go through, you're going to be in another room with those doors forever. So, what difference does it really make which door you go through? And our functioning is a lot like that. You could say every time you make a decision, or every time you do anything, you've completely changed your future. Cool. So what? What's and you go and you do something. And I pick up my glass and put it here instead of there. And all of a sudden, I'm in a different future. My life is irrevocable forever. So what? Is it better or worse or not? What does that even mean?
But we still tend, at least I still, to follow pattern.
Sure.
And I think it's comfort. I'm not sure about that.
Well, it's irrelevant. Because even that transcends being that.
Yeah.
Even as it is that. So at that point, in that case, it doesn't matter anyway, because it isn't that.
Yes.
You can never know what's actually happening. So on that basis, it doesn't matter whether you do things this way or that way, because you aren't actually.
I take in with the statement that not hearing one way or another in the sense of having a certain experience of freedom means that it's not good for the people around. My experience of that is that
I agree.
It's better for the people around you.
Sure.
That it instantaneously you have better skills and better presence, and more clarity around how to, it's also how to, didn't that mean anything per se, but in your terms, maybe sort of functionality or whatever, and no linearity, no concepts about that. Free flow's all there. It's all there. But to me, the statement of it's not necessarily good. Almost triggers for me, like, perspective. There's a perspective going on there, and that's not, my experience of. It's playing with what free would be, but
I agree with you. There's a lot of ways to put things, and most of them are hopelessly partial. and all of them are inaccurate.
But then this triggers my perspective, which is like, if there's anything that, you know, seems like it's partial, I want to go to war with it sometimes anyway.
Hey,
You know,
cool.
I want to be like, no, that's not it.
sure, yeah.
I need to look at the wall and find the other space.
Yeah, none of this precludes going for the highest common good. Or whatever that
Oh,
phrase
absolutely.
is.
Good luck with that one. Save the dolphins, save the whale.
Absolutely.
You know, peace. May all beings be delivered from suffering. I mean, hey, go for it. More power to you. I ain't holding my breath. But,
It's not idealism, though. It's not like that. There's no, like, you know, big purpose involved. It's not like that. There's not a thought, like, oh, I'm doing this or something.
sure. Well, I agree. I mean, I think the highest possible functioning is the most open possible functioning, because it's you're being truest to your nature. But in a profound sense, that's what's already has always been happening. So it gets very subtle and slippery and multidimensional to try to try to get a handle on that.
Well, I guess if it's like, well, I don't give a shit, and I give a shit, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
The realization is like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if I give a shit, I don't know. It's like, I'll never know if I give a shit or if I don't really.
Sure.
So why even bother to give a shit or don't give a shit?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because what you are is outside of it's bigger than that dichotomy. You are the system within which that dichotomy occurs, and you are the system within which any dichotomy occurs. So you include both sides of that anyway. So it just doesn't matter.
Also, labeling it as it's for the greater, some action is naturally taken for the greater good is sort of a redundant thing because it's already that way.
Yeah, but you know, like I said, it's subtle, endlessly subtle, and it's not important. It's not important to try and pin anything down because nothing can be pinned down. So.
Well, you'd never know what the highest good is.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like, how can you even know
Even when
what
you
the highest good is?
you know the saying about the way to hell is paid with good intentions.
But isn't it interesting that we all react to different forms of language?
Yeah.
You know, so if I say highest good, you go, wait, no, that can't be it. And
Because
so we
that's
each
still
have our
labeling
reactions to, well, anything is a label. Anything that comes out of your mouth is a label. Anything is a label. If you take it that way. It's a perspective in Peter's term.
But everyone's unique, and everyone has their own, you know, let's say proclivities or nature that is not necessarily particularly coherent or tidy, but is as it is, and shows up as expressed in our functioning, in our reactivity, in our communication, in every aspect of what we are, and it's constantly dynamic and evolving system. It is. Why don't we take a little break? It's break time. So, if the internet's working at all, we're going to go off for about 10 minutes or so.
Okay. But we all dance.
Yeah. Way stronger.
Oh, the perfect trip.
10 minutes.
And if I take a card, I won't be able to see what it is.
And now, Susan?
We'll try it again.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm on the net. That was super good.
Why does it slow down like that sometimes?
Oh, DSL. There's a lot of networks here. We've got about 15.
Is there a better alternative?
Was there a Comcast?
I don't know.
Yeah, you could call and see if you get a faster service.
You can't hear?
We got it.
We're online.
Peter, John mentioned patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and there seemed to be patterns, and there was also like flailing, like addictive behavior, which has to do with like suffering and sort of believing that you're in something and you can get out to some degree.
Right.
And then in that, also at the same time, like we talked about not caring, like some of the flailing associated like has repercussions, and that might stop you from like engaging in say drinking too much or something.
Right.
But then if you don't care, like I find that if I care less, I don't care about the repercussions as much. And then the patterns or the tendencies or whatever can like even get more unchecked. But also seen from one standpoint, it's delusional. I mean, some activity could be interpreted to be based on delusion, like thinking I'm in something and I can get out of it. And I could drink in a way that's consistent with that. But then also there's you know, just a pattern of drinking, or like people, you know,
Right.
can drink and have even a lot and have like no problem, not
Right.
suffering at all, and it's just like their their nature or whatever.
Right.
So, can you tease those things apart at all, or?
Well, yeah. In practice, the trick, or the fun to jump to the end. The answer is that patterns aren't really patterns, and flailing isn't really flailing. And when you see that, it diffuses them, it undermines them. See, all of these kinds of orientations and behaviors tend to feed back on themselves. In other words, they're self-verifying. They seem to be important, and the fact that they seem to be important makes them seem to be important. And this sort of self-perpetuates. So when you see that they aren't, what's really happening is not what it seems to be, then that feedback loop is cut. There may still be tendencies, there may still be those patterns, but at that point the patterns aren't patterns, they're who knows what. And so there's an added element of openness, an element of we can call it detachment or non-attachment or less obsessiveness about these kinds of orientating to patterns or orienting to, behaviors that are essentially orienting to patterns, even if they're, oriented to interpretation anyway.
Yeah.
So when you see that what's actually happening is completely beyond what it had seemed to be, then there's an opening up that can happen, which cuts all these feedback loops. It may or may not have a drastic effect in terms of what your behaviors look like, let's say, in terms of personal functioning, but that becomes irrelevant at that point, because at that point your behaviors aren't entrapping. What makes them entrapping is not the behaviors, it's the obsessive feedback of thinking you're stuck in it.
Right. It feels like a karmic thing the way it plays out. Like, 'cause I can see that. It's like there's a sloshing around or something that happens because, like I was saying before, it seems like I feel less entrapped by that thing, but then it's like my behavior can become even more wild or something.
Sure.
Because I don't care.
Right. Well, maybe so, but it's not about. The point of this is not to change your behavior in one direction or another, or to hold it in check in one direction or another. That's not what it's about. What it's about is for it to find its own level outside of a context of erroneous interpretation. So you come into your actual nature more fully, more uninhibitedly, through not being oriented towards, sort of side issues. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, all those kinds of, behavior issues and all that are self-regulating. If you're doing self-destructive behaviors, you'll either succeed in destroying yourself, or you'll fail and you'll probably get tired of it and eventually find yourself in some degree of more moderacy, or not. Who knows, whatever. And that's not really the point or the issue in this context.
Yeah, but how do you know what an extreme behavior actually is? Because we have so many societal, rules and regulations about that, and then if you start to break free from the societal rules and regulations, your psyche kind of goes, oh my God, am I in extreme behavior or not? Well, the society thinks you are, but do you think you are? And it's hard to tell if you think you are because who judges that? The society. It's like a little weird.
It's irrelevant. There is no such thing as extreme behavior. All behavior is extreme, or all behavior is just behavior. Let's say, and it's it depends on who's assessing it.
But you said it's self-destructive, so.
Well, I was I was putting his sort of metaphors or his context back, and I mean, if it could be seen as being that, if it was seen as being that, and if seeing what it is and a release of inhibition makes it more what was formerly seen to be that, then it could be said to be, more what you had been holding as self-destructive. Maybe. But all that is just speculation anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, the point is to see what's really happening here, and what's really happening here completely transcends any actual patterning, any actual even orientation. Which doesn't, paradoxically, seeing that doesn't change anything, but you see that it never was what you thought it was, which may change everything. Notwithstanding the fact that it doesn't change anything. And the more you come to see what this is and orient towards it as it is, which is not a conscious or a logical or even deliberate transition, let's say, or reorientation. What you think you're doing completely morphs, and your old way of assessing your every aspect of your status just becomes less and less relevant. And what that means in external or objective terms, who knows?
When you say you see what this is, it seems to imply that it's more than just another partial look at something. It seems to imply a kind of bird's eye view.
Sure. But when you see what this is, you see that this is that which presents itself unendingly as partiality. Like a dream, when you see what a dream is, you don't find anything other than the dream, which is what the dream always was. But you're getting that, it's a dream, it's not a world, it's not this, it's not that. What this is a readout. It's a readout of unending presentations of what it is. Just like a dream is a readout. Which is a readout of what you can't say. It is all just a speculation. It's a readout of subconscious processes.
No, but talking about interpretation, which is really interesting. Dreams can be so wild.
Sure.
And you wake up and you go, "Thank God that wasn't real," but or not. But then you go, "What was that?" And if you just kind of pay attention, you can, it's not actually an interpretation, but it's something else. It's like a awakening to it was sort of this readout thing. It was a revelation of this energy kind of coming forward. Yeah. You can kind of go, good.
Part of the aspect of what this is an unending communication and display and revelation of a profound meaningfulness. There is a profound intelligence and a profound meaningfulness which continually reveals new aspects of itself in every phenomena of experience. And that's just part of the deal. It comes with, so.
Talking about dreams, the thing that's been useful to me is I also have very vivid dreams, and it used to be a thing, I guess, where I woke up and said, "Wow, what an interesting thing that was fake." But on the other hand, kind of going along with what that's been said, what presents itself to you in your general experience, everything is just as real as the next thing. And I guess that's also really helping me understand kind of what's going on here is saying that, which sounds obviously completely insane to anyone else that doesn't understand this kind of stuff. But I had this dream, but it wasn't like fake. It was real. This thing happened to me, and I felt these things, and I saw these things. And even not referring to it as a dream kind of helps to, I guess, recognize that things just occur, and it's all kind of part of the same thing.
Yeah, because the last word can't be said. You can't find what anything really is. I mean, you can't find what a dream really is. You can't find what so-called waking experience really is. And yet it is actual, it is profound, you can know it intimately, but it's always open-ended, it's always elusive, it's always like a mirage, just constantly receding, and when you try and get close to it, it evaporates, and yet it doesn't go away. It's just part of the extremely strange nature of what it is. Experience is actual. And we have all sorts of qualifications of dream and wakefulness and, mental or sensory or imaginary, but all these classifications are arbitrary because in the final analysis, they're all just hot air. They're all just empty assertions. No one knows anything. It's just this amazing presence, experiential presence of just all these energies and qualities in the way that it is.
There's also, when I wake up from dreams, they don't leave as much of a trace. Like now, like if I was believing it, I used to be concerned about the certain, like, I thought it was so scary, and now I'm scared or something. But it dries up more quickly. But the thing is also that just the endless presentation and believing in this and then believing in that, believing in this and believing in that, just it's easier. I care about it less, but also it still feels like tiresome. So this just goes on forever, and it's exhausting or something.
Well, it depends what you mean by tiresome or exhausting. It is exhausting, and you go to sleep.
Yeah.
You pass out. But it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And in another sense, it's not at all tiresome because there's no onus. There's no obligation. There's nothing you have to do in actuality.
Right.
So even though the sun's shining, but it's not particularly tiring because you don't have to do fuck all about it.
Right.
and likewise, every aspect of your experience is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's going on. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do your experience.
Right.
And when you see everything that happens, even things that you are supposedly doing, you're not actually doing them. They're just appearing.
Yeah.
And then you see the effortlessness of this event because it's doing itself, and you're being done. I mean, in the actual sense, you are that which is doing it, but it's not you, the individual. It's not you that can experience tiredness. It does not experience tiredness.
Yeah.
It's a perpetual motion machine. It has endless, infinite radiance beyond space and time.
Well, I can also see that say all the sequence of circumstances that are in a dream that seem to present dilemmas or whatever, they don't hurt anything. They don't damage anything.
Yeah, and the same is true in waking life. The past is gone forever. The present moment is the only thing that matters, and it's gone forever. The future isn't here, and when it is here, it'll be gone forever.
It's strange to me that there are methods that have been proposed to become aware of whatever. The Buddha and Jesus and Mahavir and whoever these people are, tend to have formulas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so obvious that formulas don't work. That why even try to go there? You know, like prostrate yourself 1,000 times, or meditate every morning at 4 o'clock, or whatever it is, you know, that you do.
I think most enlightened beings did not have process, and I think that their followers, as they codified their teachings, generated process.
Yeah.
I don't think Buddha had a whole lot of actual process. I mean, supposedly he enunciated the Noble Eightfold Path, but my personal theory is that that was an addition, a political addition, historically, long after the fact.
Same as Jesus.
And the same with Jesus, you know. I think Jesus was probably a whole lot more extempore and real and you know, spontaneous than the codified versions of Christianity that have been. I mean, he never said anything about fish on Friday or whatever. I mean, you know, all the bullshit.
You mean we can eat fish on Friday?
You can't.
It seems like people like that kind of stuff because that's how we learn how to spell or like read a map at 12 times or something. There's like a formula. So when it comes to someone telling you, guess what? There's this other great stuff happening. There's a formula for that too. Seems like, I mean, I got really drawn into that in an intense way just because it's so present around you, and when it's offered to you like that as like, silly, but
most of that process that's presented by institutionalized spirituality is, in effect, there to suck you in, to get you to become one of the flock, and then you're tithable or whatever it is able. And their particular way of sucking on your life force.
I think also people do it sometimes because it gives them peace of mind. They don't have to do the hard work of actually waking up.
Well, sure, it's a wonderful promise, you know, like all you have to do is follow this recipe and then everything's going to be great. Yeah. And if it isn't, just keep at it, and maybe then it will. And then repeat recursively. Didn't work. Okay, keep at it.
Not everyone's temperamentally inclined to do the hard work.
Right. Well, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, but there is process.
There is process.
Mechanical formula is useless, but process is useful because ultimately the development or let's say the progressive exercise of intelligence is what brings about realization. And the progressive exercise of intelligence is communicable. Or let's say may be communicable.
But when you say it's different for everyone?
Of course.
For me, I had whatever experience I had of awakening, I can very clearly explain what my mental process was, but that has nothing to do with what happened.
No, it's energy.
And it's energy, yes, and it's and it's impossible to know if it was past conditioning or.
Well, it's irrelevant. It's meaningless. It was the tidal momentum of the progression of the unfoldment of your being. You got to a certain point where it hit critical mass and went.
Well, you see, I don't even know if it hit critical mass or if it was
No,
just serendipity.
that's just the way of putting it.
Yeah.
Serendipity is the same thing.
It's call it a coming together of sufficient factors, which you can call critical mass, or you can call serendipity, you can call luck, you can call
whatever. Yeah.
You know.
There is no finality in this whole like thing of like there's an awakening. You know, to me, it's like there is no awakening, and there's just the moment of awakening.
Yeah,
and
sure.
you can't rely on that so-called awakening as if it's a thing, as if it happened. It's like there it is. There it is.
Sure. I mean, awakening is just this condition. Awakening merely means being what you are, which is seeing this condition, which of course is unceasing. It's not an event, or you could say it's a constant event. And yet, habitually not recognizing it has a very different feeling tone in many ways, let's say, than recognizing it. And it is recognizable. And having recognized it, you continue in that recognition, even as it is not static. It is not a stasis. It's not anything you've achieved. It's not anything that wasn't always the case. The whole thing is very paradoxical.
But there is
continuing in that condition is also unfolding of, maybe that
eternally,
which isn't in that condition. Do you see that there's not a finality of when once you see it, then everything's there, because there's still stuff that has to awaken within this organism of whatever consciousness that you talk about. There's not an absolute finishing of that.
Right. It's not like that.
But there is a flipping of the switch.
Yeah. A good, an analogy that I stumbled on rather early that I kind of like. It's like when you're crossing a stream and you're stepping onto a stone. At one point the center of gravity is more on the shore, and you feel the stone, and you get to the stone, and you get over that, and then maybe there's a certain point where the center of gravity is balanced, but at a certain point your weight is more on the stone than it is on the shore, which is a different condition. So and if you continue onwards in that direction, your weight will never be more dominantly on the shore anymore. It's on the stone. If that communicates anything to you, I find that meaningful. Anyway, it's not really important to split hairs about awakening. It's more to the point to do it.
Would you say that we're already there? We just have to understand that we are.
Yeah, reality is already exactly what it is, and it's not going to become more what it is. And yet, reality seems to have the very strange ability to not recognize itself, or let's say to grossly misinterpret itself, and then it also seems to have the very strange ability to come to see much more directly what it is.
Right. So if I've had these strange blips of clarity that last for 0.2 seconds, where I'm talking to Jesus, or I'm talking to Jeremy, or I'm talking to my mother, or I'm walking down the street and I see a pigeon, that, it's all, is that maybe kind of a hole into...
Yes, it's exactly. That is realization.
Okay.
And like I said in my analogy of stepping across the stream, you're let's say analogically, energetically, you're kind of feeling the rock that's in the stream, exploring it as a possibility of a place to put your foot. And at a certain point, a time will come when your weight is on that foot, on that stone. Until then, it's just sort of a possibility that's there. And again, this is not a precise way of putting it. Everyone always has revelation of reality. Everyone. It's impossible to not have, naked seeing of reality. Everyone has it all the time. Most people, let's say, arguably, don't appreciate or recognize these moments, and they just may think, boy, I'm really spaced out there, or wow, what happened there? Because they don't have a context within which to see that as meaningful. It just seems to be divorced from their normal experience of what they do consider meaningful. Maybe their lives or their careers or their relationships or their parents or their whatever. Whenever they would put that as or whatever that feels like to them. And then they'll have this moment, they'll see a beautiful sunset or something and go, You know, you go, wow, that was. They might say, well, that was something. Or you might say, God, you know, whatever. They might just sort of turn around and go, oh well, what's within it? But you get to a certain point, or some people get to a certain point where you begin to appreciate. You begin to get, wow, that was something. That was really something. What happened there? What's going on there? Or maybe you just have a big. Some people maybe just have a big flash one day and bang. They just see it, you know. Who knows? It's always unique, but the point is again not to analyze it or to have the science of what it is or how it happens, but to do it. To participate in it. And it simply means being with your own experience outside the context of what you're used to holding it to be. And your experience already is realization. It intrinsically is realization. So see that fact. Which you can do any time because it's the case. And because you are seeing that fact. You've never seen anything but that fact. There's no other fact to see.
Yeah, that might segue into a dry philosophical question I have.
You, Dean? You, a dry philosopher? I don't believe it.
Well, it's vocabulary. It's bone vocabulary. And It's just a term that they use from time to time. And I'm not crystal clear about it from context, but let me give you an example as I remember it. Just wrote it down. This is from the Single Days. His name is Lee Master. How does one remain in the natural state? Question. Just leave it directly as it is. And then he says, don't try to remove any visions. Visions is the word I'm not quite clear about. I think I understand what he's saying, but I'm not quite sure what they're talking. Is visions a generic term for experience itself? How would you read this if you saw it?
I don't know. I need to see the context.
Don't try to remove.
But,
well, you're sitting there doing nothing, basically.
But you're not even necessarily doing nothing.
Right.
But you're letting experience be what it is.
That's it.
Which is, they actually have a real nice technical term for that, which I'm not remembering right now. Basically, you're not pushing and pulling on experience. Yeah. You're not trying to spin doctor it. You're just, here it is. Yeah. Which does not imply passivity necessarily. It just implies whatever is, let it be the way it is, as it is, without any pushing or pulling on it to any degree whatsoever.
I suppose they mean by vision some part of experience which you want to push or pull on.
Probably. I mean, that's the essence of it. Whatever technically they're referring to, the essence of it is that. And everything is essentially the same vision, because everything is an apparition, an experiential apparition.
Maybe apparitions.
And we push and pull on these things through like and dislike, through noticing and not noticing, through various different ways of positioning ourselves with regard to interpretations of what these visions are. But the visions aren't really visions. The visions are the natural state.
Yeah.
And when you're with the visions as the natural state, there's no visions to push and pull on.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of the practice. There are no things. There are no people. There are no circumstances. There's no time. There's no space. There's no events. There's just yes.
Yeah,
and yet we abstract those imputations within this, and then get all bent out of shape about these things and try and orient ourselves to these things in various degrees and ways. Mm-hmm. And that's how we seem to get ourselves in trouble. Of course, we don't actually get ourselves in trouble because none of it's actual. But we forget that, and you get to mythical suffering, which of course is actually radiant presence, so it's not even happening. But the trick is to get to see that, then you get the perks.
Chickentosa?
I don't know. I don't know that one. I mean, I might know it from its English translation. I mean, you know, it's really just about being completely brutally honest. If you're brutally honest, it's self-evident that you don't have a fucking clue about anything. You know? Period. Across the board. You don't know what anything is, you don't know how it works, you don't even know if there isn't anything, or what that even means. You know, and all of this stuff that we usually orient towards is imputations, it's interpretations. It's, oh, there's space, oh, there's time, oh, there's a world, oh, there's a human race, oh, there's my life, oh, I was born, oh, I'm going to die, you know. And it's all empty assertions. You don't really know any of those things that you claim you claim as facts that you then orient to, because you don't know what they actually are. They're just hollow, you know. They're labels of a question mark. Labels of what? You just don't know that. So in that not knowing, that's the actual condition. What is this? Is it even a this? Is it even an is? It's like you can't say anything whatsoever about it. It's just all empty assertion. And that is the actual condition. It's just simply a matter of honesty, that's all. I mean, the essence of the highest spirituality is just absolutely unyielding honesty.
And that brings you to the experience of whatever the moment is.
Of what?
Of whatever the moment is.
Well, you could say that, yeah. But I mean, at that point, there's not a moment and there's not experience. It's just, and there's not nothing either in any simple sense. But you can't. But even that, I mean, anything you say about it is hot air. And yet, and there's power in this actuality. You know, we think that by all this naming and all this orienting, we're gaining a handle on it, getting some leverage, but it's just the opposite. We're cutting ourselves off from it. There is a power in this absolute, undefined actuality. There's a profound power, profound intelligence, a profound meaningfulness. And when you're with it on those terms of just it being it, you know, you live that power. You are that power, and that is empowering. That is the life force. That is completion. That is the divine. That is all these, you know, all these hyperboles that we throw around. That's what they actually refer to.
Just a comment on methods across my mind. I might as well mention it just for fun. You know, I think where the methods come in somewhat from personal experience. Once the teacher starts getting a lot of young people together, as they often do, young disciples start to, you have to have something to use up their energy.
Keep them off the street.
Yeah, and you like to connect that with spiritual life. And they like to think that they're going somewhere with that. But basically, you have to come up with something that uses up their energy. And And, if you look at it from that aspect, it makes perfect sense. You go to this group or that group or the other group, and you can see they're up chugga, and using up their energy, and then you can sit quietly and hear a little truth. And then, not that that's a profound observation.
No, sure.
But I think it explains some of that.
So what happens if you get a bunch of old farts in there?
Well, they've used up their energy.
Thank God.
What are you calling this old farts?
It was a hypothetical question.
It was, nothing to do with anything.
There's this dilemma that without pushing and without pulling, you get into an attempt to get into that stance. I'm not pushing and I'm not pulling.
It's more subtle than that. You don't push and pull on the fact that there's pushing and pulling.
Right,
you have acceptance of the fact that there's non-acceptance.
You don't push and pull on that either.
Right. And if you do, you don't push and pull on the fact that you push and pull. It's subtle, it's nuanced, it's very delicate. I mean, to go back to what John brought up, that's why heavy-handed sort of process, heavy-handed recipes are an absurdity, because where the actual engagement with this, the powerful engagement with this exists is extreme subtlety, extreme delicacy, extreme intelligence. It's not brute force. It's not mechanics, repetition. It's not like that at all.
Mm-hmm. But even that can be liberating.
Can be which?
Even the formulaic rituals can be liberating.
Oh, anything can be.
I mean,
because again, it's not about what it looks like outside. It's about the anything that's happening is a vehicle for intelligence.
Yeah. So
and anything can be and is a vehicle of
taking
intelligence.
the Holy Sacrament can be just as liberating as
anything.
sitting.
Yeah, because it's not about the behavior; it's about what the intelligence with which you participate in it. Let's say.
Not even looking for this to do that.
But there's still no you, and there's still no participation.
Right. I mean, the actuality of that.
Yeah.
There's this thing of like seeing that literally there's no more or less awakening in any so-called body.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever argument you'd like to make that here's more and here's less is actually false.
Absolutely.
So, it's almost stopping the argument in terms of my language with judging anybody or assessing anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Or seeing anybody as a buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And,
absolutely. Yeah.
We're a mystery.
Yeah. Bottomless mystery is what we got.
Yeah.
Except for the we and the God.
So there's this thing like where there's like this juncture sometimes uncertainty for me is that, this being, which is just maybe by meditation, if you're just sitting there, or when you're with like-minded individuals, where you can just go, okay, we're good now. There's this sense of that it's not universally translatable, So if you say something or do something, it might be meant with like, what are you doing? Like that, like this thing. And so, there's this thing that comes in like, okay, well, it doesn't matter one way or another, which kind of helps to diffuse the seeming crisis of the mind when something doesn't seem to be working. There's I don't know how to say it, but there's always like this learning how to translate into the moment.
Yeah.
Learning again how to translate into the moment.
Sure. There's infinite degrees of let's call it the axis of consonance and dissonance in energy engagement, which are always simultaneously present. So there's always some degree of connection, there's always some degree of missing, and that is always the case unresolvably on infinite different levels and infinite different degrees. And it's the very nature of energy engagement that that's the case. And yet, or not say and yet, but and the intelligence is continually exploring that issue. That's what this is. This is the fact of the inherent intelligence exploring that astounding mystery of the fact of hitting and missing and occurring simultaneously, and the weirdness of that, and yeah, absolutely, it's profound. And of course, we see that explicitly in interpersonal communication. But basically, all energy phenomena is exactly the same thing. It's a degree of sort of resolution versus chaotic, irresolution, which is always paradoxically simultaneously present in all energy present. And that's always the case, eternally. But there's no end of the depth to which the intelligence can take that, seemingly refining it and refining it and refining it without actually ever getting anywhere. Because it always does this.
It's interesting hearing you talk about this in terms of energy. And previously you had talked about awakening as being a real energy situation. And now looking at situations or looking at experience in terms of dissolution or connection with energy. Are you not necessarily disregarding, but you're talking about experience of energy, not necessarily through the senses? I mean, we can definitely feel energy, but you're also including other ways of...
I mean, experience. It's kind of an arbitrary paradigm because you can't really say what you mean by energy, but it's sloppy. But energy, all experience can be seen as energy presence. I mean, I call it radiant presence sometimes, which would include any experience. So it would include what we usually classify as sensory experience, would include what we usually classify as mental experience, would include what we usually, any other classifications we could come up with, is all still within that paradigm if you're looking at it in those terms. And that's a rather useful way to look at it, I find. It depersonalizes it, and it takes it down to a almost mechanical level of, essentially flashes of energy, that are simultaneously have a degree of resolution and a degree of unresolvability. Which is in physics they have that. I mean, quantum mechanics. Is it a particle or is it a wave? Well, yeah. And so all experience is this energy presence, and including consciousness, which is experience, which is energy presence. So there's nothing other than looking at it in terms of this paradigm, and to call it a field of energy presence. And what exactly energy means and what exactly presence means, you can explore and refine to whatever degree you like. But then you're dealing with it in impersonal terms. So an energy presence that you're usually qualifying as personal, like a sensory experience or a thought or emotion, is analogous to some energy presence that you might classify as impersonal. But it levels the playing field. It brings everything down to a field of presence, rather than subject and object. Mind versus matter. I mean, all these kinds of polarities that we often approach our experience in terms of subliminal.
Well, what I sometimes experience is kind of turning off. I mean, it's kind of like a recognition after the fact that there was a kind of white noise going on.
Sure.
There was all this kind of grinding and, like as a personality or a take, which is kind of, I just call it, say, white noise, and then suddenly that disappears.
Sure.
And then you're just kind of left with a very impartial, neutral, kind of like crystal ball or something of what you're aware of.
Sure.
That seems very impersonal and sterile.
Yeah. There's a vast range of flavors that the energy can present as. It can present as intensely personal, it can present as intensely impersonal, it can present as meaningful, it can present as meaningless. But again, the actual energy will transcend actually being any of those things, because it doesn't resolve down to that. In other words, it's like because the palette of energy qualities is so broad. It's like, well, what is it possible to experience? Well, it's like, God, I mean, it's inconceivable. The range of experiences of qualities that can present an experience is absolutely undefinable, absolutely unlimited. And can it look like can it look like anything that you call anything? Well, yeah, obviously, because if you have a name for it, then that means that there must be some apparition that name seems to apply to. So you can get out your dictionary and start at aardvark and go down to whatever Ziziski or something. And and every single one of those words imputedly refers to some energy quality, some degree or range or set of energy quality presences.
Well, it seems as if when it's devoid of a kind of emotional take on something, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's all just a take. One seems more truer than the other. And if that's, it's probably just another...
Different versions of the same thing. Because there's always a degree of emotion present. Well, it may be a more personalized seeming emotion, but it may be a less personalized seeming emotion, but there's always emotionality to some degree present. Just like there's always, personal versus impersonal. I mean, when you look at things in terms of these polarities, it's never absolute. It's never actually one or the other. There's always a range, and it's always interpretive. And what it's interpretive of is a presence of quality, whatever, which is ultimately unresolvable. And that presence of qualities is an objective fact. whether it's a seemingly subjective thing that is present, is still objective. It's a fact that that is the only objectivity. And whether it seems to be subjective or objective, whether it seems to be this or that, blah, 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 blah. The fact that it is, the fact that it presents, the fact that it is experienced is a fact, is the fact. And so the question is, what is that fact? That's the interesting koan. What is this fact of presence? And then you undercut all these qualifications. Well, you're including them. You're not throwing them out. You can keep subjectivity and objectivity. You can keep clarity and confusion. You can keep realization and ignorance. You can keep all these qualifications. But what are they qualifications of? And then you go to the what is present here. And all the details comes with. It's not like you're throwing out the details and you go into some sort of plain vanilla insane stupidity. You get to keep all the details. You can keep all your qualifications and your labels, but what are they labels of? What are the post-its stuck on?
Do you know that?
Sure, you do know it. You are knowing it right now. You know it in the way that you know it, and you can explore what that way is, which is not a way of logical analysis. That's not very powerful, and you can progressively go through different sort of paradigms or ways of, was this viable? How much mileage can I get out of this mode of being with it?
You're talking about isness.
Yeah, isness.
But isness is
That's what the
actually
process is stuck
insane
on.
possibility. Whatever you said. Isness is the insane possibilities. Or I don't remember the exact expression you used, but it's something like that.
We'll have the court reporter read it back.
But I mean, there is no.
There's nothing but isness. Isness
There's
is
nothing but
it.
isness, and there's no logic or truth or
Yeah.
lies or
Yeah.
misunderstandings.
And yet all logic, all truth, all lies, and all misunderstandings are the isness.
Absolutely.
But the isness transcends merely being any of those things. And each of those things transcends merely being any of those things.
And the isness isn't isness either.
That's right.
Now wait a minute.
It's isn't-ness too.
G, none of the above.
Yeah.
That's the answer. The final answer is D, none of the above.
I thought it was a bowl of cherries.
How can you not have isness?
Well, what you have, what you call isness, you have, but is it really isness? Is the question.
Well, we don't know what to call it, but we know
No, I'm not talking about calling it, I'm talking about what it is.
what it is.
And is it even an is? I mean, it's obviously as close to an is as we've got. But does it stop there? Does it actually sit there? Does it like is? Because do you go to it with isness and does it say, yep, that's it, it's isness? Well, yeah, it is isness as far as, anything we've ever thought is isness is this, yeah, but is that inclusive? And the bottom line is any qualification is too much qualification. Even isness. Even that it is. Even though that's about as general as you can get. But even that's too much. I mean, that's why I call it transcendental. What I mean by that is that it is beyond any qualification, no matter how intelligent, elaborate, ingenious, general, inclusive. It's like, that for sure, but it's beyond that too. You can't sum it up. You can't circumscribe it. And on that note, appropriately, it's quitting time.
You can't circumcise.